What's up, everyone? So today we're looking at the build out of this bad boy right here. Aponix vertical barrel from my friend Marco, who is the creator of the Aponix system. So if you're wondering what this thing is, it's very similar to the Tower Garden style of hydroponic system, except for, in my opinion, it is a bit improved upon that model. So I've done videos on the Tower Garden before. This is a little different. So we're gonna go ahead and get into this. It's kind of gonna be a long video because we're talking about how to construct it, what sort of setups you need. The beauty of a model like this is it is so versatile. You can see there's all these 2-inch net pot inserts right here, but you can actually run this as a vertical soil barrel too. You can use it as a composting system. There are almost an unlimited amount of options with this, and it is only limited by what's in here, your mind. What do you want to do with this? So we're gonna go ahead and talk about how do we set this thing up. I want to, personally, my first grow with this is going to be a green system. How do I get effective greens growing out of this? And we'll see which ones I decide to do, because some of them, of course, will do better in a hydroponic system than others. We might maybe want something compact. There's a lot of growing sites here. And so let's go ahead and get into how do we actually set this up so it's running, and then we'll get into the grow. All right, stay tuned, guys. Before we really get into construction, I kind of want to just show you some of the stuff that came with the kit. A lot of different plumbing parts because, again, this can be run as a hydroponic or a soil system, but you've got different types of inserts that can go over into the system. So this would be an opening for a soil-based system where you can plant into these little sections here. We've got backups of the 2-inch net pots, tons and tons of little things. So the beauty of it is it's as modular as you want it to be. So let's go ahead and start talking about the plumbing. The way this system works is actually pretty simple. So what you have here is you have your reservoir. It's a little dirty. We'll be cleaning that out before we do the grow. Then you have your growing sites. So those would be going on just like this. Next, you've got your top. And so this top, what I've done with this top here is I have a little screw top right here where the water will pump out, but I need a hose attachment. So I went to the store and I got a 1/2 inch to 3/4 attachment here so I can thread the hose right over this with these barbs so we have a pure seal. So that's what you need on the top. And then on the interior, you're gonna need some kind of pump, right? Water needs to go vertically up in this system, so I've got a hydrofarm pump here. You can get something from an aquarium store. You just need to get something powerful enough to pump about 4 or 5 feet upwards, right? And so then I've attached, as you can see, the 3/4 inch barbed attachment here, so this can just slide right on and I have a perfect seal. This is just 3/4 inch vinyl reinforced tubing here. And again, this is fine that it's clear because we're growing on the interior, and so any light, there's really not gonna be a whole lot of light hitting this, so the algae growth won't be too big of a deal. But if you really wanna be sure, you can go ahead and get a black tubing here. And so what we'll need to do then is run it up. And so what we'll do, we'll take this off, and what I'll have to do is cut this to size. So this will go in here. We'll run the pump out through this little power hole. So this will come out like this. And then what I'll need to do is cut this tubing to size so that it runs perfectly vertically straight up to this right here where it will then barb in. I've got the pump securely fastened to the bottom of this system right now, and I'm doing this because I need to know where I'm going to cut my tubing, because we don't want to have any extraneous tubing that we don't really need. And so what we'll do is we'll attach it to the bottom here with these suction cups. I'm going to place on the growing chambers, and we're going to thread this upwards and see just about the point where we need to cut. And so it's going to be about 4 inches below the top here. So I'm just going to stretch this upwards, and it's fine if we have a little bit of leeway. Better to have leeway than to be short. So we'll go up and we'll cut right about there. There we go. And now we just need to thread this on. Make sure we got a firm seal here. The system comes with a bunch of these little rubber gaskets, so we make sure that there's a tight seal. Go ahead and thread that. Place the top down So now we need to fill this up with water and see how it works. So we're filling the reservoir up just via a hose down here. Let's talk about this. Why does this work? We've got a chamber up here. This is where the water is going to pump out of. And then what you are probably not seeing on this camera are these tiny little holes drilled into the edges here. So you can see this water comes out, it's going to slope downwards, and then these tiny little holes are going to drip water vertically down onto what eventually will be net pots filled with some sort of growing medium here. And so this design is really nice because you've got water coming here, flowing down via gravity, and then you have a nice overflow valve. So if the pump is a little too fast, it's pumping a little too much water, you're going to have some just drop straight down, which will not be interacting with any of these plants because it's too far away. And so it's actually a really elegant design. And then the piece that's not shown here that I'm going to add on top is a cover that goes actually over this. And so then you're getting a little protection from the sun and some evaporation of your nutrient solution that's actually sitting on top of this right here. So we'll go ahead and finish filling this up and let's see how this works in action. All right, the plug is in. Again, apologies for the dirtiness here. Definitely need to give this a little clean. But what you can see is just about the perfect amount of water is bubbling out and it's reaching the sides here. And those are those holes that I was mentioning. So this is the feeding system that we're looking at. And let's just see kind of what it looks like on the interior. Getting just a nice little drip supply of water coming down perfectly on the edges of all of these systems. And so imagine if you've got a net pot in there, this is a tiny drip of water coming down. Roots are going to be growing on the interior of this chamber, and so they're going to be getting a perfect mix of water and air. And actually the beauty of this system, if we peek in here, we can see the pump at work, is actually you can design almost any interior irrigation system that you want. And so if you wanted to, as we peek in, you could actually have a PVC running up and you could do sprayers for more of an aeroponic system. You could modify for certain sections. It really is up to you. And that is why I'm a big fan of the Aponix system over something like a tower garden, because the modularity and the non-necessity for, let's say, proprietary parts. With tower garden, you're gonna have to buy their slanted net pots. As you can see here, you can just use a 2-inch net pot, which means that you don't have to buy it from Aponix. You can buy it anywhere. And honestly, I also bought this pump, this section of hose, and that brass attachment that's up top here. I'm not sure if you can see it. There it is. I bought that at Home Depot. And so really, what's costing you is this. And you can even build something like this yourself if you don't want to buy the Aponix. So this is how it works. Let's go ahead and get into some of the planting details.
So I got some Grodan 1-inch by 1-inch rockwool cubes, and I like to just kind of slice these up with a knife. Cuts really easily. It's one of the nice things about rockwool is you can just kind of chop it to whatever size that you want. And now we're taking these 2-inch net pots that came with the Aponix system. But the good thing about these as compared to something like the tower garden is that these are just generic net pots. The tower garden system and other types of vertical gardening systems try to lock you in to some of their products. Whereas Marco and the Aponix, one thing that really turned me on to this product is the fact that you can just go buy any old 2-inch net pot if you want. You don't have to buy the Aponix branded one or anything like that. And that's one of the reasons I really like this system, because most, if not all of it, can be reused. You can just use normal off-the-shelf parts that you might find on Amazon or at a hydroponic store. So now I'm just wetting the rockwool cubes. I know a lot of people talk about, oh, you need to soak these to the right pH and do all of this complex process. I find that honestly, it hasn't really been necessary for me, so I'm just not going to do it in this example. So I'm going to do, in this example, you're seeing me do Tatsoi Rosette, and this is my seed organizer. If you want to see the video on how I did that, go ahead and click the top right-hand corner. And I like to do 2 to 3 seeds per hole just to make sure that I guarantee germination. It's just my way of making sure that I get a seed coming out of every single net pot so that the entire vertical barrel or whatever other hydroponic system I'm using just works perfectly and I have all the seeds that I want. Now, the other thing to consider is that it also helps you in the sense that you get too thin to the absolute best seed. So that's another benefit. And now I just like to cover these up, keep that temperature up, keep that humidity up, give those seeds the environment that they need to germinate, and then we're on to see how these look in a couple days.
Some poppin' seedlings in here. So everything I planted earlier is starting to come up, and I want to get it into the system as soon as I can. So these are still a bit young, but I want to make sure that they don't stretch anymore, and I want to make sure that, you know, they're transplanted into the system that they're going to live their life in. So let's go ahead and move these out to the Aponix vertical barrel. All right, we are back. Here's what we've got going on. So this is the vertical barrel that I've talked about right here. 58 different growing sites. We have 58 different plants that are going to go in. There's the base right there with the water pump at the bottom. There's the top that we're going to squeeze the tube into, so we get that vertical system. And then here finally is the little cover that's going to prevent evaporation. So I'm going to go ahead and get to planting, and I'll talk about some things you might want to consider when you're growing in a vertical hydroponic system, which very effective use of space, very efficient way of growing. However, there are some things that you need to make sure that you do not do so you have a good harvest. All right, let's get to it. First thing we are doing is filling up the reservoir with properly pH'd and nutrient-rich solution. And so if you've watched my other videos, I've done videos on how to properly pH your nutrient reservoir and add nutrients so that you know you're giving your plants everything that they need in order to thrive. So we're just gonna fill this up. This is around 5 gallons. And all we need to do is just make sure that there's enough in here that the plants don't drink it down too quickly, it doesn't evaporate out, and we're good to go. And so that looks like it's just about what we need. So our next step then is to add on our growing chambers. There we go. The beauty of the Aponix system, at least versus maybe the tower garden, is that in the tower garden you have to put these channels together, and the channels themselves form the vertical water line. Whereas with the Aponix, you've got a hose attachment that can be modular, and so you can use it for pretty much anything that you want. So we're gonna go ahead and attach this right now. All right, now we're gonna do a test just to see if the water's running correctly. And it looks like it is. So now let's get ahead and start actually transplanting into the system itself. While I'm adding plants to the system, let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits to growing in a system like this. And again, this is just vertical hydroponics. I'm not necessarily saying the Aponix system, although it is a pretty cool one. First of all, you're getting, I mean, look, there's 58 different growing chambers here. I'm getting the opportunity to produce 58 full heads of leafy greens in a space where if you were growing in soil, you would struggle to grow 4 maybe, because the diameter of this is maybe 2 feet long. And so 2 by 2 feet, yeah, you've probably got opportunity to grow 4 or 5 different greens. Versus going vertically about 4 or 5 feet up, you obviously have a lot more opportunity to squeeze in more growing sites. Now, the downside, here's the downside. Anytime you are doing a vertically irrigated system, you have to make sure that it's on a level surface. Otherwise, you're gonna get water that does not fall and hit. Because remember, what's happening here is it's hitting the bottom edge right here. That's how it's irrigating all these growing sites. And so if you have it slanted a little bit, it will not be hitting the bottom edge of all of these equally, and thus some of them will not get irrigated. So that is one of the problems that you'll run into with a system like this, but that can be mitigated by either putting it on a level surface from the beginning, or if you don't have one in your area, all you can do is just put little shims underneath certain sections so you're countering out some of the imbalances. And that's pretty much it. The other thing that you have to worry about with a system like this is if you have any issues with your irrigation. So like if your water was to run out in the reservoir, well, you're gonna kill 58 plants at pretty much the exact same time, because they're all going to have no water, right? And because there's no soil to support these, there's going to be an issue where the roots can dry out exceptionally fast, especially in high heat environments. And so if you're growing, if you're doing this in the summer outdoors, that's a high heat environment, and that can be a situation in which running out of water is really a death sentence for your plants. So you gotta make sure with hydroponics, yeah, you get a lot of efficiency, you get a lot of, control, but what you're missing is those buffers, right? So it's like hard to control for little errors that happen here and there. And so if you're a commercial hydroponic grower, that's like your number one concern. Because if you're a commercial hydroponic grower, anytime you mess something up like that, well, there goes all of your profit, because you just lost all of your crops. So we're almost done transplanting here, and after that, we're just gonna plug this in, let it run, and we'll cut to a couple weeks from now where we've got some pretty good growth going on. So there we go, last two are in. Let's go ahead and get planting. All right, the moment of truth has arrived, my friends. It's time to plug this in, add the top, and see what happens. So, here we go. It's gonna get loud in about a second. There we go. Starting to drip. Yep, so we can see it. So we have it up and running. And if we look inside one of these little net pots here, we can see the water is dripping right down on the edge, which is exactly what we want to happen.
Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. I've got a lot more coming with the Aponix vertical barrel, as well as many other different types of hydroponic things that I'm going to be building over the course of this year up until the release of the book. So please feel free to subscribe, like, comment, hit that little bell if that's something that you'd like to get a notification of. And until next time, everyone, good luck in the garden and keep growing.